Alright, in this video what we wanted to do was we wanted to kind of show you some of the techniques that we actually used as far as painting a tree, doing a water line, and doing some of the foliage. And I have over here, what I have here is that this is actually a blank canvas and it's sitting on a white table. And what we're going to do first of all is I'm going to kind of bring things into the view of the camera so that you can see me work. This of course is our jar of turpentine. And I take the liner brush and right away what I'm going to do is I'm just going to really soak it in there. So I've got lots of turpentine. Then I'm going to take and go over to the palette. And if I'm doing a tree, I'm generally going to take and just go into a spatch of the color. And our palette's a little dry, so I'm going to kind of dig some of that color up. And there it goes. Now it's coming a little bit deeper. And you can pull this out here to see if this is going to work, if there's enough color on your brush before you actually put it on the canvas. So a lot of times that's what I'll do. I'll kind of scrubble that in there, get it mixed up pretty good until I get something. Okay, that's looking good. See how I've got a nice, it makes some nice lines there. And that's kind of what you're wanting. Then you go over to your canvas. Now bear in mind that your canvas, when you're doing a tree, you're going to have background color already there. So whatever is on this brush is going to blend in to a certain extent with your paint in the background, which is fine because you really like to have that. You want to hold the brush at the tip like this, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to kind of point it down back towards the ground, and you're just going to come up like this. And there you go. Now it's not solid, which is okay. It doesn't need to be solid. If the paint starts drying off like it does up top here, you'll notice it's a little thicker over the bottom. This is where you started. And as you draw the line up, it gets thinner and thinner, and you lose paint. You can dip a little bit. Now I don't wash it like I did. I just dipped it a little bit. And then I'll go back over to the palette and I'll go in that same area and scribble it around again. Now what I like to do is I like to twist the brush. Watch my hand here. See how I twist it between the fingers? This way it kind of rolls the bristles in the paint and it soaks it up really nicely. So I'll do that. I'll kind of twist it between my fingers, and then I'll usually pull a little bit, and that gives me an idea how much paint I've got on my brush and how much turp. Right now it looks like there's a little too much turp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the palette knife here and I'm going to scrub a little bit of the paint, and I'm going to get some more paint in here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of the turp or the oil, because that'll make it a little bit thicker for me without making it so watery. Alright, now we've got that done. Now let's try that again. Now again we're going to go in here and we're going to roll it between our fingers to get it nice and loaded. And then I'm going to kind of just, that's much better. See how thick that is? It's not real runny. So now I'm going to come back over to my original line. Now if I want to, I can redo the line. Bear in mind that when I redo the line, I'm going to have a thicker tree trunk. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll use my little pinky finger to kind of steady my hand a little bit, especially if I'm going over another line. And then I'll kind of come in there and I'll go over that line again. Now, watch this. When I lay that down a little bit, you see how thick I can get that? And then lifting off, it becomes a little thinner. Okay, so if I'm doing a thick tree, you lay it down real hard. Now the paint is still wet. What I'll do is I'll come in like this, and then I come off, and there's a branch. So let me show you that again. You're laying it down in the line of your trunk. You've got a pretty heavy hand, so you can see how it lays down. It's not the tip of the brush. You're laying it down, and then you're just kind of coming out. And then you're lifting up and getting to the tip and coming out there. Now, a lot of times I find I have a steadier hand if I take it and I hold it much like a pencil but a little bit far away, and I'll come and I'll get another branch to come off of that. So it's held just like a branch. or like a pencil here, but it creates some nice branches. Now, in here, this looks a little thick, so what I'll do, holding it just like a pencil, but more or less on the side, I'll come in and I'll kind of scribble a little paint in there to thicken that up and make it look more like a normal branch. You know how it starts thick at the trunk of the tree and then it thins out. And I'll kind of get it to make it look more like as natural as I possibly can. When the paint starts running out, I'll go back in here and I'll dip again and then come like that. Works real well. Come back to the original thing here, and then I'll usually, now the paint is loaded right now. It's real thick. So if I'm needing a little bit more dark under here, which I would, because this is always going to be in shadow, whether it's direct sunlight or not, because it's the bottom. If I go from top to bottom here, this is going to be my shadow side. Even if the sun is coming in this direction, this is still going to be in shadow. So a lot of times I'll start the paint right here because that's the heaviest. And then when it comes out here, I'm kind of coming along the underside of the branch. So I'm already creating different values within the branch to show my highlights. And then I might redo a branch because I might want to make this a little bit thicker and maybe even make that kind of like that. It's a really thick branch coming off of there. And you can see how that's beginning to look pretty creative. You can get as many of these branches as you want to. Just depends on how much detail that you're putting into anything. And basically, once you get this initial thing in here, we can kind of come up. Let me show you. A little top here will come up in here, and you know the idea is to be a little shaky. And we're running out of paint here, so. But you can see how now that looks pretty good there too. Looks like a cut off branch. So there we have the beginning of a nice little tree. Now when you're doing the foliage on the tree, that's a little bit different technique, and a lot of times what I'll do is the foliage first, and then I'll do the rest of the trunk and get the trunk to match the foliage. Other times we just go ahead and we put in the trunk first. I'm more likely to do that with the foreground trees, to put the trunk in first and then the foliage, but with the background trees I generally end up doing the opposite. Now on our present palette knife, I don't have any green made up, and just for purposes what I'm going to do is a lot of times what we can do is we can take a darker color, and I'm using burnt sienna right here. Now, let me get that down so you can see it. Right in here, this is our burnt sienna. I don't have any turpentine. I'm using the filbert brush, the number, what was it, number 8, and it's totally dry brush, no turpentine, no oil. And I'm just pulling some paint and really getting it just on the tip of the brush. You don't want to dab it in there and get all of the brushes filled with paint. You're really wanting to work with the paint just on the tip of the brush. Then what I'll do is I'll come in here, and this is a good background color to use. And in most of your paintings, you're going to have a wet background anyways. So whatever I dab on here is going to blend in with my background. And that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to dab in. Now, again, just like with the liner portion of it, when my brush right now is fully loaded, so that first dab is going to be dark. It's loaded with paint, and the more I dab, the less paint that goes off from the brush onto the canvas. So our foliage is very dense in along where the wood portion of the tree is, and as you get further out to the smaller and smaller branches, you get less and less paint. So this right here, what you can see is that as I'm going out, the paint is getting thinner and thinner, and all I'm doing is dabbing. And I'm going right around the areas where I put those branches in and just kind of saying, okay, this is what we would have. And I can come back and I can make this area a little bit darker, or I can make, say, let's say the foliage is going to go way on out here, but as it goes out, it gets a little thinner. And see, as we're doing this, you see how nice that looks? And I can get thinner and thinner, and then this kind of creates the illusion that we can see sky behind there, and then actually we can, because we've got sky color already there. But there's a nice foliage. And I might go down in here and something like this, and okay, we're going to have some foliage in here too. So I've got wet paint on that trunk, and I'm just going to kind of play with the foliage here and just make it whatever way I want to. But what I'm doing is I'm dabbing, and what we got appears to be foliage on a tree. And then you'll come across, like might be our base color, might even be our dark color. We might come across with 2 or 3 more colors. If we do it wet on wet, each color will blend in on itself, and before you know it, we've got a tree that looks pretty good, has a lot of density and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of an example of what we've been doing so far. As far as our trunks, we've got our foliage. You saw me do this on the first video, and this is basically the technique that I was just doing, was just a tapping like that with this brush here. Okay, if you guys got any questions, let me know. You can email me or you can write it in the forum. That'll be pretty cool. You know, I'm willing to answer any questions that we have. I want to make sure that you guys get this down. All right, see you in the next video.